Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Got a Case of Wanderlust podcast, a show dedicated to all things travel. I'm your host, Lydia, and on this episode, you'll hear a conversation between me and another fellow traveler that will hopefully inspire you for your next travel adventure. If you enjoy listening, consider following the show and giving it a rating on Spotify, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a quick review. It would mean so much to me. All right, thank you so much for being here today. Hello, everyone. I'm here with a special guest today. Her name is Colmenares, and she is the host of the Solo Female Travelers podcast. And I'm super excited to talk with her because she's been to 25 countries, for one, and she's had her podcast for 3 years, so much more experience than me. And I'm excited to talk to her about all the things travel, solo female related, podcast related, and of course, all things travel. So welcome to the show, Lou.
Thank you so much, Lydia, for having me.
Yes. So the first question I always like to ask is, what sparked your wanderlust?
You know what? I don't know if that is something that we are born with or it's like an experience. But I am a very curious person, and I always knew that there was more of the world to see. Me being from a small city town in Venezuela, I always knew that there was something more than just, going to the farm on the weekends and just like doing like the same thing every day. And I remember that there was a show that it was called Bitácora, is in Spanish. So there was this woman that every Sunday she would visit remote areas in Venezuela. And I remember always watching that show and deeply admiring that person. I still follow her on Instagram, and I send her DMs once in a while. But
Respond.
she responds, even though she has like 3 million followers. She responds. Um so I don't know, sometimes I feel that I was born with it, and not only that, I am curious, I am very determined, so I always made things happen. I remember, after I graduated from high school, I will hitchhike around the country because I didn't have any money to travel, so I will do that. And but then also, if we take it back to experience, like if it was experience that sparked my love for travel, I think it will also was that show that I used to watch on Sundays. So I think that is something very personal to everyone, to either identify if it was an actual moment, or like you just know that you are going to be a traveler since you were a kid.
Yes, definitely. I think it, of course, depends, which is why I love to ask that question because, some people like for me, I would say it's just been in me. Like innately, I've always knew I wanted to explore the world. But for some people, it's like a certain trip or, a certain person, like in your instance. So it's always interesting to see. So I would love to know about your kind of life in Venezuela because you did live there for a significant portion of your life, and so I kind of wanted to talk about how the Venezuelan culture kind of influenced yourself right now, and also how did it support or did it not support your traveling lifestyle?
Got it. Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. I don't think everyone has ever asked me that. So let me think about it for a few seconds.
Yeah, take your time.
How it has influenced the person I am right now? Well, we have a very laid back culture, and we're very community oriented. So I still try to keep those characteristics here in the United States. Like trying to stay in touch with my friends and see them pretty often, and also I have a lot of patience, that which is, growing up in a country like Venezuela, where I also a significant part of my life I grew up under a socialist government, which is still in power. So we didn't have water for days, we didn't have electricity for days. Sometimes you wouldn't find certain types of foods in the supermarket, or like things like toilet paper. So I will say that it has taught me a lot of patience and also a lot of gratitude, because here in the United States we have so much that, like, sometimes little things like buying a toilet paper that is extra soft like brings me so much joy, because there were things that I didn't have access to back in my country, and even either if you have the money or not, it's just like you didn't find them. Also things, and then I would say like things that didn't support me was the mindset there, that especially when it comes to women, we have like a certain roadmap that we should follow. I remember growing up, the things that I would hear were things like, oh, you should find a rich husband, or you should marry a rich guy, or don't behave that way because men don't like that. So I that totally like that didn't support me, because I kind of feel that I couldn't really show my true personality, because what if not only men, but what if only people around me don't like that? So I always felt like I was walking on eggshells. Also, ways that also didn't support me as well is, at least in the environment I was in. Again, I am from a small town in the southern part of the country. I just feel that people there, at least in my environment, didn't have as much emotional intelligence. So it was really hard to have conversations with them or setting boundaries. And then when I came to the United States, I experienced a whole different environment where, people understand boundaries, and where women have more independence and more power to themselves. And also here in the United States, it's more about, do what makes you feel good, like focus on yourself. And before, I was just like, back in Venezuela, I was more in the mindset of, oh no, I gotta make sure that everyone around me is feeling well. And I don't know, I know also from what I've been studying last week, I know also Eastern cultures are like that. They like, the main goal is to keep the harmony in the community, in the society, and then that they make sure that everyone is doing well except themselves. And so, honestly, coming here to the United States was a fresh a breath of fresh air, because I was like, oh, I am allowed to focus on myself. So that was amazing.
That is amazing to hear. Well, I definitely wanna say that I always admire people who have the courage to follow their dreams despite, the barriers that are presented to them. And I can relate specifically in your case because I was listening to one of your podcast episodes and you mentioned that your parents were not super understanding of your traveling ambitions. And on a similar level, I can relate. So, how did you find, that confidence and that strength to still pursue what makes your heart alive, despite everyone around you saying that, it's not a good idea or just didn't support it necessarily?
Back then, I remember back then I was just like, but why? You know that every family has that one member that is always questioning everything and everyone is getting upset at. That was me, because I was always questioning everything. It's like, why? But why? Like, why are you guys living this way? And like, why don't you travel? And I also understand again that this is the societal pressures that they had were different. It was more towards family. Again, for women it was more about finding that rich guy, or like that guy that can provide for the family. And I remember for my parents, I just did it. I mean, my parents didn't really agree with anything. They didn't even agree with me coming to the United States. My mom did, but my dad didn't, and I just came, even though he, didn't talk to me for a while. And I think that when you have those desires to travel, I mean, just do it. You're not hurting anyone. It's not like you're going to commit any major crime. So you have to be really clear with himself, and be like, okay, I have this desire to go travel, and I'm gonna make it happen, and have a plan. And 90% of the time, when you have an idea that is not aligned with the people, with other people's idea of what you should do, you are going to experience resistance, and that's part of life. Just go do it. I mean, nowadays my parents are like super proud of me for everything I have done, and sometimes they even say that they helped me to come to the United States. I'm like, I let them be happy, if that makes them happy. But I know that when I was coming here 9 years ago, I experienced a lot of resistance from my entire family. But I just followed that gut feeling, that I just know I have to do this, and that's it. And also, again, when you follow those feelings, you have to make sure that you are not only accounting for the rewards but also the consequences. So it's like, if I'm going to go travel and I experience resistance from my parents, am I ready to have like a bigger conversation with them and be like, hey, you know this is what I want to do? And parents may say things like, okay, but you live under a roof, or la 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 la, I don't know, everything we did for you. I mean, you have to account for that, and you have to find ways probably to f- to find some arguments to tell them back, like, okay, like, if maybe I can move out, or maybe, maybe it all depends what your experience resistance with. But that's everything in life. And for me, it has it, like, I feel that every new idea I get, and when I start taking actions to it, either if it is travel or business ideas, there's always some sort of resistance. So just account for that and make sure to become a bigger person than those resistance. And also, there are some people that, even if you explain it to them and you want them to get the vision that you have, or the big picture, they won't get it, and that's totally fine. For example, with my parents, they have never traveled. They don't know what it feels like. Um, so and even my grandma, which was one person that really criticized me a lot when I first came here, and then when I started traveling so much. Then, because then also I came to the United States, I got married, I started traveling, and then at some point I got divorced, but not because of my travels, just other issues. That I remember my grandma was all the time like, why you got divorced because you traveled too much, and she will always say that. And then one day, out of nowhere, she said, you know what? I know that I always have criticized you so much for traveling, but I wish I could have done the same. But instead, I spent all of my life here, not following my dreams, and also in a marriage that I was very unhappy in. And I was like, oh man. So, even the people that is, resistance to you doing certain things, just do it, because maybe they are doing that because you're living a dream that was theirs as well, but they didn't have the courage to do it.
I absolutely love everything you just said. And I completely agree. People may, say things that seem like they're trying to look out for your best interest, but that's not supporting your dreams, and that's only because they are not following their own dreams. And, in reality, you know what's best for you. And at the end of the day, it's your life, and you can consider what other people say, but it should never dictate what truly makes your soul happy and the most authentic to you. And that's something I'm trying to learn for myself because, resistance isn't always easy, especially when it's coming from someone you love or someone close to you. But I think that resistance means that you're doing something worthwhile, and that's never something to run away from. So I kind of
Yeah.
would like to follow up on a couple things. One on intuition, but also on the differences that you experience coming from, a society that was more patriarchal to the United States that's less patriarchal. Yeah, how is that experience like?
I mean, looking back, when I came the first year, I it was really hard. I just didn't understand it. And um well, like the patriarchal aspect, I didn't start paying attention to it until like 3 4 years later. But I remember at the beginning, what I didn't understand was like the individualism, right? Like, what is everyone in their own bubbles and just like, okay, I something I used to like that I didn't get, but now I do that all the time. It's like, okay, when I am with a friend, it's like, oh, when are we going to meet again? And then it's like, okay, let me check my calendar. It's like, okay, that's 2 weeks, sound okay? And then, okay, I can meet you from this hour to that hour. I didn't understand that. And then when it came to the patriarchal aspect, I mean, I don't like it's man. It's very interesting because I mean I don't I mean I have like mixed opinions about this because I've lived in both places, like in both with both sides of the spectrum. But I mean, sometimes like that caught my attention is that in here women work, and they work, and most of them do half and half. But then also they decide to have kids, and then someone else is taking care of their kids. That's something that kind of like I find very interesting. Whereas back in Venezuela, for example, you have a whole community that pretty much raising a child, because like let's say you have a baby, and then you have the aunt, you have the grandma, you have the neighbor, and like everyone is willing to help. So um and then also if the mom doesn't work, the mom can take care of the baby, kind of. So when it comes to like childcare, I think that kind of like I don't really agree with the way it is with the United States. But then also when it comes to like how independent women are, and like how it is okay for them to do so many things, and also safety as well. Because like I remember back in Venezuela, um, domestic violence was a normal thing. Like people like will accept it, and not only towards women but towards kids again. So that's also something that I don't agree with it. And I know that one of the reasons to that is because, if you depend entirely on your partner, um, that person will think that they own you and that have like any power over you. Whereas here, if you go 50-50, um, there's like an equal amount of respect, I will assume. But yeah, I mean, I maybe because I'm in my 30s, I've been thinking a lot about like the childcare aspect um, of kids. And plus I was in childcare for about 10 years, working as a nanny and working as a teacher. So just like that aspect is the one I'm like, okay, maybe like some things are better there. And it takes a village to raise a child. So I mean, that aspect I think is it's cool. But then again, when it comes to women, I also think that when it comes to the independence part, um, being able to afford to the house, being able to have your own money, and being able to own your finances is very important, which is something that at least I didn't see in the environment I was in back in my country.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting and very sad to hear that it's so normalized in that culture.
It is actually one episode I had recently with a psychotherapist from Mexico, talking about like machismo and how it affects women. One of the main topics was that, like, like things happen to women. She shared some scary statistics about violence towards women in Mexico. And it's like, yeah, and it's so normal, like, oh yeah, like, oh, 11 women die every so often. And it's like, oh yeah, but it's like everyone talks about it. It's something that happens. And then that's it. It's like another news. And just like, oh well, in Latin America there are like a bit things to do. Like there are a lot of things to do when it comes to women, and especially about raising their confidence. Because Also, that was one of the main things we talk about. It's like confidence. If you don't have confidence, there's not really that, like, there's really not much you can do, because you won't have the, like, the confidence and the power to, like, to set some boundaries, and to know what works for you and what doesn't, and to take a risk.
Yeah. It's so sad for me because I think, growing up in the US, maybe we take it for granted about the privileges and freedoms that we have as women because it's just not a reality in some of these countries. And I guess it just blows my mind that, like, how are women not thought of equal still? Like, it's just crazy. And anyone who says, like, the patriarchy doesn't exist or doesn't consider themselves a feminist at this point is just, like, mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the, also, like, the great things about travel. You get exposed to different realities, and you kind of, like, realize what you have been taken for granted in your place back home. And again, I mean, there are different ways to do things. There are also, like, cultures where women have big positions of power, and everyone goes to the grandma for advice, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And I don't know, that's also one of the great things about travel, getting exposed to those different realities, and check in with you and be like, okay, like, what do I have, what should I be grateful for, and what I should do more of, and like, what did I learn from my experience that I want to integrate in my day-to-day life at home.
Yes, I completely agree that the cultural aspect of traveling is one of the most valuable. What is one culture that had a huge impact on you, on your mindset, or just your travel experiences?
I would say it was Indonesia. I was around different islands in Indonesia, and coming from the United States, where everything is about, what we're always looking forward, like, what's next, and like, how can I be better? How can I make more money? How can I be productive? You're always trying to be productive. Over there, it's like a slower pace of life, for sure, and people are, like, so connected to their spirituality, and they they were always, like, very family oriented, and they will get together and make offers to the gods. And like, that taught me a lot, because it's like, you will think that, oh, people here are poor, but are they really? I mean, maybe they don't have many material possessions, but they are very rich in other areas, and also, like, they are, like, so connected to their spirituality that, I mean, probably for them it doesn't make sense to work 12 hours a day and be productive. So they're just, like, enjoying the day as it is, and that definitely caused a big impression on me, because I remember back then I used to work like 80 hours a week to be able to travel as much as I wanted. But then when I got to the places, I kind of will have that mindset still of, like, working and being productive, and I will, like, schedule activities nonstop. And then when I was in Valley, it's like, okay, you have to slow down. Like, you have to slow down, because that's the way things are here. And that was a great lesson in itself.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something so beautiful about slow living and just s- the phrase stopping to smell the roses is something that comes to mind because it's something that's so against what the Western culture, at least like in the US, embodies. And so it's very refreshing to experience a different pace of lifestyle. And there's value to both for sure, but I think the US can definitely benefit from learning how to be, a little bit more in the moment and not so in a rush to be somewhere that, is ultimately at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter. Like life is not a race.
Exactly. No, it isn't. And yeah, we should all learn to be more present. And I feel like the biggest hypocrite right now, because I'm definitely learning how to embrace that. And I'm always, like, thinking about what's next, and just like being trying to be insanely productive and then finding myself being burnt out. And then it's like, oh, I'm burnt out. Okay, I'll go travel. But but it shouldn't be that way.
Speaking of misconceptions about different cultures and just cultural differences in general, can you describe or maybe combat any misconceptions about Latin American countries?
Yes, I have many misconceptions about Latin American countries. Okay, not all Latin American countries, specific Colombia, is like the show Narcos. They are beautiful people. No, not everyone sells drugs, and not everyone is related to Pablo Escobar. I think that will be the first one. Not everyone does drugs, because that's also one that I actually I heard that last year. Um, Another one, not all Latinos like to be considered sexy bombs. Not all of them look like Sofia Vergara. Um, um, what else? What else? Um, a lot of people think that Latin America is very dangerous, and I there are areas which are very dangerous, but also there are other areas where are super safe. And usually the touristy areas are safe because it's in the locals' best interest to keep to keep tourists coming in, because it helps the economy, it helps them, and it helps their families. um, another another misconception, yeah, I mean, it's always like most of the misconceptions are related to safety, but again, you have to stick to the tourist areas and you have to know where you're going. And yes, I will agree, there are areas where, if the people running the town or the city don't, well, I will say the town, they wouldn't run an entire city, but if the people running the place don't know who you are, they will probably kill you, which there are some areas in Mexico that are like that. But again, that's not the very touristy area. So just stick to those. And if you want to go off the beaten path, make sure that you ask the locals and you go with people that knows. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all really powerful statements that defy what the media projects about many of these countries
Yeah.
because I think a big one that you mentioned was that all of them are plagued by, drug cartels and, like, if you set foot in the country, you're gonna get killed, but, of course, like, everything is situational and dependent on the individual and, like, the time, place, like, it just like things like this can happen anywhere, and that's something that I mentioned in previous episodes, but
Yeah. No, and
yeah.
actually, sorry.
No, yeah, go
And
ahead.
actually, the United States, it's among one of the most dangerous countries now, because you don't know when there's going to be a shooting. And you and me, we both live in the United States. I remember um, I was having actually another podcast interview, and then I got a notification that there was a shooting like in a neighboring city. I'm like, okay, so if you put it into perspective, and if it comes down to numbers, I think that the United States will be up there when it comes to safety, like when it comes to countries that are not safe. Sorry.
That is such a good point. I feel like when I tell people I'm going to this country, they're like they always have reservations, like, "Oh, it's dangerous. You shouldn't be going alone, blah, blah, blah." But, like, I go downtown, like, in Chicago by myself, and they don't have the same complaints. And yeah, it's very interesting because the US is like not the best place either, and people don't like to think that about their own country, but it's like it's reality. But can you talk more about um, safety tips or just solo traveling in general, like how we can still be enjoy ourselves and go to these places, but
Of course.
also be a smart traveler.
Of course, yeah. If you're a woman traveling alone, I mean, there are like some rules that of course you have to follow. The first one is that if you I mean, don't walk alone at night. Make sure that you make a friend at a hostel, or you make some friends online. Or, I mean, if you make friends online, make sure it is from a Facebook group or like couch surfing, and make sure that you guys meet at a public place first. Again, if you go out at night, make sure you don't get drunk. Especially if you are if you're a woman, and you don't want to be drunk and don't know and lose control of yourself. Another one will be to keep your money and your valuables in different places. Like, put some money on your shoes, and like put some on your, I always carry a funny bag. I love funny bags because it's like right there in front of me. And then, just like have things in different places, and the most valuable ones, make sure you put them on a like funny bag or an invisible belt, or one of those tools that keeps your things hidden. Also, make sure that your research to companies or places that you're going to go to, like, always research is going to be your best friend. You want to research your destination, you want to research the place you're going to stay around, and you want to research, yeah, like just anything that comes to your mind. Everything is on the internet now, and we have many blogs that tell you about someone's experiences at that place that you're planning to visit. I would say another one, which is, I don't know, I think that everyone does this, but I think it's important to not to use headphones while you're traveling or walking alone, because if you cannot hear what is happening around you, like, everyone can get you from behind really easily. So make sure not to wear headphones and that you are paying attention to your surroundings. Um, Another one, this is a new one, but I mean, only do this if you want to like take a self-defense class. I've been doing self-defense since November, and I just feel like how my confidence have gone through the roof. And like, if someone approaches me, I kind of know how to knock them down. So so I think that that will boost your confidence a lot. And also, once I asked a male psychologist, like, what was his opinion about like women, and like why some women get attacked and others don't. And his answer was that it all comes down to confidence, because the predators will always go after the easiest prey. And I think like the lesson here is that you don't want to be an easy prey, and you want to be confident. Like, people are like, see you, and they're like, okay, I cannot mess up with this girl. And always have a plan. If you are at a place, make sure where the exits are, and just like try to think like 2 3 steps ahead. I know this is like, you're not going to be in high alert all the time. Not all places require this. If you're like in an island where like safety is, where nothing happened and safety is super good, I mean, of course you can relax. But if you're walking from one place to another, it's always good to be alert. But I will think also the main one is like not to walk alone at night, and yeah, and not to drink at night either
Mhm.
if you're alone.
Yeah, those are great tips. Do you have any insight on how we can decipher what we read online, as like to believe it or not? Because you
Mm.
mentioned like to do your research, and I totally agree with that. But there's just so much conflicting information. Like, for example, if I type in, is Mexico safe, or is this particular place safe? There's so many things that say yes, completely safe. But then there's another one that says no, don't go here. So, how do you do your own research? Like, how do you decipher whether something is um like safe for you to go to?
Got it. No, yeah, of course. The internet has all the information in the world, and I mean, billions of people are posting about their experiences, and one percentage will be positive, one percentage will be negative. I would say that, maybe set a number, like do a statistics, let a statistic to do their work. Like, for example, I don't know, look for 10 references and 10 blog posts. Like, out of those 10, how many say it is bad, how many say it is good. Also, if you know someone from that place, or if you personally know someone that has gone to that place, ask them directly. Um, and because they will give you a different insight that is not on a blog post or a podcast episode. Also, Facebook groups are a big tool. So once, if you post something, I'm going somewhere, and then you will receive like 500 comments. Okay, I went there and this and that. So also, if you receive that many amount of comments, let numbers do their work as well. And then also, when it comes to good or bad experiences, you didn't know what that person was doing there. um, you don't know how that person was behaving either. And sometimes, I remember when I used to go to Tijuana, I was going to Tijuana pretty often for about 3 years. And I love Tijuana. I find it like to be a super fun city, and nothing bad ever happened to me, even though I was there alone many times driving through bad areas because I will go to visit orphanages. Nothing ever happened to me. Actually, my experience was that people was very nice, very friendly. I used to have actually more friends in Tijuana than in Los Angeles, where I used to live. And that's it. If you ask me about Tijuana, 10 out of 10. But if you ask other people, they will say that it's super dangerous, that these many things happen to them. But when you start digging deeper, it was because these people went down to Tijuana to drink, to do drugs, to go to strip clubs, to get crazy. So if you're all drunk and drugged up on, like, on the streets, of course you're going to be a super easy target and something bad is going to happen to you. So again, make sure that that you behave, and things should be positive. And something actually that I didn't mention on the last question, another rule I think when it comes to solo travel is to notice how women there are dressing. For example, when I was recently in Mexico City, something I noticed is that all the women I saw that were from there were wearing jeans or long pants, and I was the only one wearing a dress, even though it was a long dress. But actually someone from there told me like, oh, you should wear jeans. Not, like, because again, oh, they see, oh, she's dressed differently, so she must not be from here. So try to do everything in your power to not be an easy target.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely, I would say try to blend in and look
Hmm.
like the locals. Don't be that tourist, especially that American tourist, drawing so much unnecessary attention to yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
beautifully said.
and to that point, not only physically, but also the way you behave, try your best to, research the culture and the customs if there are any. And ultimately, it comes down to respect and also intuition. And I wanted to talk about that as well because I love what you said in your own podcast about how traveling builds your intuition and how important it is to listen to what your mind is telling you, and to ignore anything else because you know what's best for you. So, can you talk about um, how we can build our intuition, how we can listen to it when we travel?
Of course, yeah. So I think that we're always trying to rationalize everything, and I think that our bodies always know best than our mind. If you're in a place and you feel like that initial discomfort, that the energy is not right or something is not right, just follow it. And I know at the beginning maybe it's not that easy because again we're always trying to rationalize everything, and trying to come up with answers, and just I don't know, but but our minds, like, sometimes we just like don't listen to our bodies, and then we pay for the consequences. But I seriously, I think that we as women, we have like that enormous power, which is intuition, which sometimes we just know. Like, if you take a time and just listen to your body, like, I don't know, like, to me it's always I feel something on my chest or on my belly, and I'm like, okay, something is happening here and I should like pay attention or just leave. And sometimes, yeah, we are uncomfortable in a place and we stay because we want to be polite, or we get to in a room and we feel like the energy isn't right, we don't want to leave because it doesn't, like, it's not polite, or what people would think about me. If it doesn't feel right, just leave. And especially when traveling, I don't know what happens when we travel, that just like our intuition gets so much sharper than back home. I don't know if because we're out of our routine, and our bodies and our even minds are more alert, of course. But yeah, just listen to it, and it's like a muscle, because so I feel that sometimes, again, because we rationalize everything so much, we're like kind of like suppressing our intuition, and we're like trying to think about the rules, and if we're being polite, and what will people think about me if I leave. But when you're traveling, you don't own anything to anyone, and you can just leave if you want to, or you can just be rude if you want to, like whatever. But I mean, just do it, just like pay attention to that initial feeling, and like what is your body telling you. And I mean, as I said, for me it's my chest, or my belly, and I just know, and I do it. For you, you have also to figure out how does it feel in your body, like is it your head, your hands, you get shaky, I don't know. So you have to get familiar with those sensations and feelings in your body, and then when you travel, as soon as you feel it, you're like, okay, there's something that is not right here, and just get out of there.
Yeah, definitely. I think for one, as women, like you were saying, we have this, I guess, feeling of obligation towards people sometimes where we feel like we need to be polite or I don't know, just ignore our own desires. Um, but we need to remember that we do not owe anyone anything. And as travelers, we we need to be looking out for our own best interests. Um, so I would love for you to talk more about female solo travel and maybe your experiences, but also your advice for someone who's hesitant to do their own solo trip.
Sure, yeah. To me, solo travel, I mean, it has been a really big part of who I am right now. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episodes, I was raised to think in a certain way and behave in a certain way, and to me, solo travel allowed me to experiment with life pretty much, and be like, okay, I'm just going to put myself in different environments just to see what happens, and to see how how I respond to it. And and also to learn, and some, like, I have learned so many things from other cultures and so other people, and just people that make a big impression while you're on the road. And that has helped me so much, because it has helped me to know myself. If you're in the same environment every day, doing the same things every day, talking to the same people every day, you don't know how you're going to respond to other realities, to other environments. And you probably have heard this before, that we are just a product of our current environment and also the people we hang out with. So I think solo travel is just the way to really test who you are and to get to know yourself, because again, we don't know anything to anyone. And if you travel and you just don't feel good, hey, you have total permission to be rude and just leave. And also, if you are enjoying something, you don't owe anything to anyone, you can stay there for as long as you want. Like, I've been to places that where I plan to be there for 2 days and stay for 2 weeks, because I just absolutely loved it, and I was enjoying myself in ways that I just didn't do back home. um Also, solo travel, you don't have any, well, unless you're a digital nomad, but I mean, you don't have like any schedule constraints unless you commit to them, and it's your choice to follow through. But solo travel, to as I said, to me it is everything. And also, what I would recommend women to solo travel is just to get to know themselves better, because again, you're putting yourself in a different environment, you are going to respond differently, and you can even see it as an experiment to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to India. Let's see how it goes. Do I feel good in crowded places? Do I like the smells? Or I don't know, I'm going to go to Latin America. Oh, I just realized that I don't feel good dancing, or I just realized that I don't like this fruit that I never knew existed, but I tried. And then you start responding to these different environments, and you start also creating new neural pathways. It's about like these different smells, these different things, these different languages. And also, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Different environments, and oh, and then also when it comes to relationships, which is the thing that I love the most about solo travel, is that since you get remove yourself from your current environment, you start kind of like really auditing the current relationships you have and see if they are serving you in any way or not. It's like the way I see it is like kind of like zooming out on your current reality and see what works and what doesn't. And also get exposed to different way of doing things and see if you want to adopt those behaviors and way of thinking of that culture that you're visiting. So yes, everyone should solo travel, and specifically as a woman, because we all grow up with some sort of societal pressure, and it's up to you to decide if you want to follow through or not. And both of them are okay. You know, if you want to follow through to the way you were raised, that's great. And if you don't, that's great as well. But I think solo travel will help you to own that choice, because it all comes down to that. I mean, our life is just a series of choices, and we have to own every single one of them.
Yes, I absolutely love that because for one, I think there's so much stigma around specifically female solo travel, and I love how you are such a big advocate for it. And if all those reasons didn't convince you guys to solo travel, like I don't know what else could, because those are all such great points why we should all take a solo trip at least once in our lives. Um, and I really want to just touch briefly on the sexism that does exist within the travel industry because there's there's an I guess an expectation that society collectively has for male solo travelers versus female solo travelers. Like it's okay for men to do it, but for women, it's like no, you shouldn't because it's dangerous. But I love how you're not only your podcast, but just yeah, everything that you're doing currently to defy that is super powerful. And so I want to just ask you one last question about what does travel mean to you, and how does that compare to how you first thought of travel, like when you first started versus now?
Got it. I mean, when I first started, to me, travel was a way to fill my curiosity. I just wanted to see everything and know everyone and do everything weird, and just, I was like, oh, just doing different things. And I was doing like kind of like a competition. I just wanted to like just travel everywhere and know everything. Right now, the way I see travel is more on a like personal growth way. It's like instead of like tackling from a place of, oh, I want to see everything and do everything and blah. Now it's more like, okay, what am I going to learn from this country that I'm visiting, and what how is it serving me in this stage of my life that I am right now? And do I want to travel to connect with the locals, to rest? I'm kind of like more mindful about it. And actually, yesterday, someone told me about a country that is giving away free tickets. I think it's China. And then this friend was like, oh, well, like, look at free tickets, look at it, free tickets to China. And I was like, I asked her, would you go? And then she said, as long as it is free, I will go. And then it made me think like it's really cool. But then I start thinking, I don't I don't think that visiting China right now will serve me in any way. I'm not saying that China is a good or bad country, but it's just like the stage I am in my life right now. I don't think that I want to be in a big city. If I travel, I don't want it to be to a big city, because I remember it was to Hong Kong now that they were giving the tickets away too. And I was like, I don't want to be in a big city with a lot of noise. Like even if someone tells me to go to New York right now, I'm like, I don't think I want to go to New York right now, because it's not what the intention that I have for my future trips at the moment. So I think, as I said, it's just like I, I'm more mindful about it and see what I need in the moment, because sometimes because something is free or cheap, it doesn't really mean that will serve you in what you need at the moment.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
completely agree with that. All right. So I want to know, what's your next trip? What are your future plans? And also leave all your socials and where we can find you.
Of course, yeah. My next trip's coming up soon. I'm gonna go to San Martin in the Caribbean, and then to relax because that's what I need to do at the moment. And then my next big trip would be to Madagascar, which is something that I've been planning for not planning. I've been wanting to go for years, but never happened until this year. I was like, okay, I have to make this happen, and I'll be going there in August. And if you're listening to this and you want to get in contact with me, uh, just look for the Solo Female Traveler podcast, and you will find me in all platforms and then social media as well.
Amazing. Okay, I'll definitely leave that in the show notes. Definitely everyone listen to the Solo Female Travelers podcast. So much valuable information, and I love how it's specifically targeted for solo female travelers, which we need more of. We need more women going out there living their best lives. So thank you so much, Lou, for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to this episode. If you can take 10 seconds out of your day, please spread the travel love by following this podcast and giving it a rating. Or if there's anyone else in your life that has a case of wanderlust, it would mean so much if you shared this episode with them. You can find me sharing even more travel-related content on Instagram at God of Case of Wanderlust and on my personal Instagram at Lydia Schultz, Z. I also have a travel blog for my extra passionate travelers out there, which can be found at godofcaseofwanderlust.com. And all of this can be found in the show notes.